Coco Chanel was an innovative fashion designer who transformed women's fashion from the traditional rigid styles of the Victorian era to a more comfortable, luxurious and stylish clothing. Despite the controversy around her involvement in the Second World War, her brand continued to thrive and remains one of the most popular fashion houses. Gabrielle Chanel was born in 1883 in Saumur, France. She lost her mother at 11, and her father abandoned her at an orphanage, where she would remain until she moved out at 18. Life at the orphanage was far from rosy. The nuns were strict, establishing a firm routine for the girls. In addition to the mandatory prayer and mass sessions, the girls also learned sewing, a skill that would later become useful in Chanel's path as a fashion designer. Although the orphanage didn't offer much in the way of love, it inspired many of Chanel's future works. The clothing the nuns wore, the geometric shapes in the convent, and the colour choices at the orphanage inspired many of Chanel's future works. Beyond her routine at the orphanage, Chanel was an avid reader, indulging herself in the fiction pieces published in the newspaper. It was from these stories that she gained the dream of becoming a rich, elegant lady. These stories also inspired one of the dresses she had a seamstress make while she was still a teenager. Although the adults in her life forbade her from wearing a high-neck lavender dress with ribbons and ruffles, these motifs would later show up in her work. After turning 18, Chanel worked as a seamstress and assistant at a Rue de la Horage shop. During the weekend, Coco would repair uniforms for cavalry officers. This work familiarized her with the fabrics and sewing techniques used in male clothing, which she later incorporated into her designs. Chanel also worked as a cafe singer, where she was noted for her charisma more than her talent. Although she eventually stopped singing, her short stint earned her the nickname Coco. It's debated whether the nickname was from the songs she often sung, including Qui Vu Coco and Coco Rico, or a derogatory term in reference to her status as the mistress of Etienne Balsan. Balsan, a French textile heir, introduced Coco to French elites and her next lover, Captain Arthur Edward Boy Capel. The two met in 1908 and, shortly after, began courting. Capel soon became her first investor, helping her set up her first shop, Chanel Modes, at 21 Rue Cambon in 1910. At 21 Rue Cambon, Chanel began designing and selling hats. Her hats broke away from the Edwardian tradition of oversized, ornate hats. Her hats were simpler, less voluminous, and more wearable. Her design philosophy, which informed all her collections, was clothing that was elegant, comfortable, and allowed free movement. Her hats soon became a hit among the French actresses, leading to widespread recognition of her brand. 2 years later, with additional monetary support from Capel, Coco opened the first Chanel boutique in Deauville. Chanel ventured into women's sportswear. Her fabric of choice was jersey, a material previously used for men's underwear. Jersey changed women's relationship with their bodies and fashion. It also helped that many women needed practical clothes to wear as they worked in factories during the war. Her approach to fashion made her brand a success, resulting in her opening her first couture house in Biarritz in 1915. She employed 300 people in her couture house and started working on her first Haute couture collection. In 1918, Chanel purchased 31 Rue Cambon, establishing it as her company's headquarters. The business side of her life was working out, but her relationship wasn't in the best state. Capel had no intention of formalizing their union, preferring instead to marry a woman of similar societal standing. Despite his marriage, he continued seeing Chanel and supporting her business until his tragic death in a car accident in 1919. Until this point, Capel was also the muse behind many of her designs, and it is thought that the interlocked C's of the Chanel logo came from their names, Captain Capel and Coco Chanel. The death of Capel was a personal and business loss for Chanel. She had lost the love of her life and also her investor. Following his death, she busied herself with work, growing her fashion collection and expanding her offerings. She turned to perfume and, in her innovative spirit, sought to move away from the prevailing trend of the time. Instead of creating a one-note fragrance, Chanel wanted something more diverse. Her perfume ended up with over 80 compounds, including wood and spice fragrances and floral scents like jasmine and rose. She named it Number 5, her lucky number, and turned it into her brand's signature scent. Chanel paid attention to every aspect of her brand, embracing minimalism, elegance, and modernity in her packaging and branding. For her perfume, she chose a clear square bottle and a white cardboard box for the packaging. She released the perfume in 1921, and it soon became a bestseller. In the 1950s, the perfume's popularity grew after Marilyn Monroe confessed to using it before bed.
A nightgown, or so I say Chanel number 5.
It's still a popular perfume across the world. As part of her commercialization efforts behind Chanel number 5, Coco had to find additional investment from Pierre Wertheimer. Wertheimer was experienced in commerce, and Chanel believed he would be instrumental in building a customer base in the American market. For a 70% share in the parfum Chanel brand, Coco and Pierre entered a partnership agreement. Later, Chanel tried unsuccessfully to sue him for the brand but failed. It's thought that her engagement with Nazi Germany in World War II was partly influenced by her desire to rid herself of Pierre. While Chanel number 5 was a hit, Chanel also released other products, including Chanel number 22 perfume, released in 1922, Gardenia perfume, released in 1925 as an ode to Chanel's favourite flower, the camellia, Cœur de Rosy perfume, released in 1927. She also released a makeup line in 1924 and a skincare line in 1927. The 1920s were a productive period for Chanel. Following the end of the war and the growing demand for practicality and elegance in women's clothing, Chanel's timeless designs were the answer. She released timeless pieces ranging from daily wear to evening gowns. During this period, she released the timeless little black dress, which remains an iconic fashion piece close to 100 years since its launch in 1926. Beyond the fashion world, Chanel forged relationships with notable personalities in media and politics, including Winston Churchill and Pablo Picasso. Her relationships with the political elite were a double-edged sword. During World War II, Chanel was in a relationship with Hans Gunther von Trinklich, who shared her room in the Ritz. It's believed that she acted as a spy for the Nazis, who saw her as a valuable asset in forging a relationship with England's Winston Churchill. Others think of her as a double agent working for the French resistance. She had closed her couture house in 1939, but her perfume and accessories lines were still available for sale. Chanel made a comeback in 1954 after living in Switzerland for years after the war and its aftermath. She reopened Chanel Couture with a fashion show on February 5, 1954. Part of her return was her dissatisfaction with the designs that predominantly male fashion designers were releasing for women. Taking the task of reintroducing comfortable and elegant fashion for women, she reopened her couture house and launched the Chanel jacket, the quilted handbag, and the two-tone shoe, which remain classics to this day. Pierre financed his comeback, effectively gaining full ownership of Chanel. Even though she retained complete control over her designs, she took full control of her first post-war collection, working alongside her workers to choose the fabrics, drape over mannequins, and sew. She finalized the details herself, ensuring the collection was to her liking. Her efforts paid off, resulting in a positive reception from the American press. While the English and French press were not so welcoming of her return, the positive reception in the US made the brand a go-to for celebrities and wealthy women. In subsequent years, the brand would grow in popularity, being the go-to for accessories, perfumes, and elegant clothing. Coco's era as a legendary designer of comfortable, functional, and timeless pieces ended with her death in 1971, but her legacy and the brand she built live on. German fashion designer Karl Lagerfeld took over Chanel. Lagerfeld remained at the helm of Chanel until his death in 2019. During his tenure, he propelled Chanel into one of the world's most iconic fashion brands. Coco Chanel achieved her goal of becoming a rich and elegant woman and changed the fashion world for women, moving away from impractical and restrictive designs to sleek, comfortable, functional, timeless and quality pieces from clothing, fashion accessories, shoes, perfumes and skincare. Thank you for watching this video. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications.